The other day I was thinking about Gen Z and I realized something that felt strange at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. You know who younger people today remind me of? Medieval China, specifically the Song Dynasty. And I know that sounds ridiculous, so just stick with me for a minute. There's all this data now showing that young people don't really care about owning things the way previous generations did. They're not obsessed with houses, cars, or even long-term careers. Instead, they spend money on experiences, concerts, cafes, travel, pop-up events, aesthetic moments. And I think this reflects a much deeper hunger for something we've lost: third spaces. If you're not familiar with that term, third spaces are the places that exist between home and work. Historically, these were bars, tea houses, guild halls, public gardens, places where people could exist socially without being productive. Today, most of those spaces either don't exist anymore or are so expensive that young people can't really afford to spend time there, and they feel it. This feels like a very modern, very online problem, but it really isn't. The Song Dynasty was actually the first society in history to develop what we would recognize as lifestyle culture. Cities weren't just designed for survival or administration. They were designed for pleasure, for wandering, for snacking, for nighttime entertainment. There's a 12th century writer named Meng Yuman-Lao who wrote a memoir called The Record of a Dream of Splendor at the Eastern Capital. And it's one of those medieval texts that feels almost uncomfortable to read because it sounds like it was written by someone living today. He describes Kaifeng as a city full of 24-hour tea houses, professional performers, storytellers, restaurants with endless customization, and neighborhoods with distinct vibes. At one point, he describes restaurant culture in a way that honestly sounds like a modern night out. Guests all order different things: hot, cold, warm, elaborate, extremely specific, and the waiter has to memorize and recite the entire list. This is medieval China nearly 1,000 years ago, and yet it feels closer to 2026 than to what we usually imagine when we hear the word medieval. What's important here is that status during the Song Dynasty wasn't just about money. It was about taste. Your taste in tea, incense, art, poetry, and leisure activities. Sound familiar? Because today, status works the same way. It's not just about how much you make, but about your music taste, your aesthetics, the creators you follow, the way you curate your life. Life has become one big mood board. This is why Gen Z is so resistant to being told what's cool by corporations. They don't want MTV or commercials deciding culture for them. They want to create their own experiences. In that sense, they're behaving exactly like Song Dynasty urban elites. And this obsession with self-curation doesn't stop at lifestyle. It extends to the body itself. Which brings us to looks maxing. Modern looks maxing sounds insane on the surface. Peptides, extreme gym routines, GLP-1s, experimental techniques to optimize facial structure and body composition. But once again, medieval China did this first. During the Song Dynasty, there was a deep divide between the Wen class, the scholarly elite, and the Wu class, the military elite. And each group cultivated a specific physical appearance to signal who they were. Scholars aimed for pale skin, slender bodies, and refined features, emphasizing that they didn't perform manual labor. Warriors focused on density, strength, bone structure, and physical presence. The body wasn't just cosmetic, it was a language. It told the world your discipline, your class, and your inner cultivation. This idea went even deeper through concepts like internal alchemy, where physical discipline was believed to refine the soul itself. A strong, radiant body wasn't vanity, it was proof of moral victory. And when Gen Z talks about locking in, cutting distractions, disciplining the body, and turning self-improvement into a kind of spiritual mission, they're echoing the same logic. But here's where things shift. Gen Z isn't only Song Dynasty coded. In many ways, they're closer to the late Ming Dynasty. By that point in Chinese history, people stopped defining themselves primarily by family, profession, or rank. Identity became intensely personal. People described themselves by quirks, emotional states, obsessions, and tastes. Instead of saying, I am a soldier or I am a scholar, someone might say, I am a connoisseur of rare incense who suffers from melancholy. That obsession with identity feels extremely modern. Today, people define themselves as neurodivergent creatives, gym maximalists, aesthetic minimalists, or hyper-fixated specialists. Identity becomes fragmented, hyper-specific, and often anxious. The late Ming period was a renaissance of self-expression, art, and individualism, and it was also deeply unstable. That's an important detail, because when systems stop working, people start looking for exits. During the Song Dynasty, success depended on passing imperial exams with absurdly low success rates. Many young men studied for decades only to fail. So they turned to gambling, pleasure districts, and risky shortcuts. Officials at the time complained that young people were abandoning work and education to chase luck. Today, the story is the same. Housing is unaffordable, stable careers feel out of reach, and effort doesn't guarantee security. So people gamble. Sports betting apps, crypto, meme coins. Different tools, same psychology. A desperate attempt to escape a system that no longer feels fair. The difference is scale. A young man in medieval China could lose his wages for a month. A young person today can lose their entire future from their phone in a single night. And that's the real takeaway. Human behavior hasn't changed. We're still repeating the same patterns. The only thing that's changed is the speed and the reach of our tools. So if Gen Z feels medieval, it's not because we're regressing. It's because history never really left. It's just waiting to be rediscovered.